have something pretty exciting to show you, or to begin to show you, because in the next 3 sessions, mine, Hanu's and Maris's, we're going to go over an end-to-end demo, starting from data in a siloed database, all the way through to an outcome, which is chatting with unstructured data, having automated machine learning from that data that was pre-processed by Qlik Talent Cloud. So hopefully at the end of, say, an hour and a bit, you will have seen pretty much the length and breadth of what Qlik Cloud can do. So let's go first to right at the beginning. This is creating a data foundation. If you remember what we talked about earlier, just going back to this slide, it's all about unlocking data that is perhaps siloed, that is perhaps hidden from your users at the moment, but is very much needed by the business. We can get that from a range of different sources, whether it is an on-prem database, perhaps mainframe or SAP, those hard to access places, or whether it's simply from a SQL server. Or maybe the data is on more of a SaaS source and it's hosted in the cloud and you'd like to get it in a consistent and efficient way. That's exactly where we can start, and like before, we can bring that data into your chosen data platform. We can transform it, we can standardize it, and make it ready for whatever business use case is on that right-hand side. Whether it be those traditional BI tools, or whether it's a bit more fancy like our machine learning capabilities, automating those workflows in Qlik Cloud. So let's have a look at this again. This is what I'm going to use as kind of the basis to build up from mine to Hanu to Maris's examples. And I'm basically just going to get right into it because it's a pretty nice use case. So the end-to-end, what we're going to do, I have data. Always starts with data, but no one wakes up in the morning thinking, oh, I've got to move that data. That's not the first thought. The first thought is an outcome, a question. And the question we're going to try and answer today is, why are my customers churning? What are the key drivers behind my customer churn? And how many customers are likely to churn in the future? From my existing, can I predict who is going to churn and why? So that is what we would like to answer. But we have to look right back at the left-hand side and say, okay, which data is needed for that? And how can I put that into a format that then can be used to answer those questions? So let's first create that data that needs to then be ready to do machine learning on. And I'm going to do this with, of course, Qlik Talent Cloud. So we're going to go into this UI again. As you can see, I have projects here. Each project can be seen as a data pipeline, a bit like we saw in the example earlier. You take from a or multiple sources, put it into a data platform, transform, maybe even model the data, and then give it over to a consumer. I can set up a project with multiple connections, and just to show you the breadth of our connectivity, we have a lot of sources here from more traditional DB2, for example, mainframe, to SAP sources, which we know are quite difficult to connect to and get data out. I showed also a few SaaS sources as well. I can also choose my target. As I mentioned earlier, this could be your kind of data lake houses, like Databricks, like Snowflake, basically wherever you would like to reside your data. The target, as we talked about earlier, can also be Iceberg, so that you can separate that storage from that compute in a very manageable, scalable and maintainable way, all done behind the scenes from Qlik. You can also make sure your data is going straight into Qlik Cloud itself, a QVD. Not just a static QVD, but like I said earlier, when we're moving the data in Qlik Cloud, it's all about, as soon as an update happens in the source, we are bringing it over to the target automatically for you. And it's no less than going straight into a QVD, which we then automatically update on a schedule for you to see all the updates. You can then go and do all that ETL in your Qlik processes like today. Today, of course, I'm going to be looking at more data platform orientated architecture, and my target is going to be Snowflake. But with this range, I can now start to look at a data pipeline. Again, I'm just going to show you and reiterate what we did earlier. And this is no different. So here I have my source. This at the moment is a on-prem MySQL database. And again, like I said earlier, we're listening out for the changes that are happening on that source. We are bringing them onto my data platform, which is Snowflake. We are keeping that Snowflake up to date. We are not just keeping it up to date, but we are automatically at Qlik generating that current view and the historized view of data so that you can have that history automated for you so that, for example, when the data is ready and transformed, I can hand it over to Hanu. And Hanu can actually see the history of data, the history of, for example, when customers changed, when they were existing, when they churned, what time this happened, and when. So then we can help make those predictions with time element in it. Okay, so that, what I just said, leads us up to storage. So the storage gives us that up-to-date view of the data. I then have a variety of different ways of transforming my data within Qlik Cloud. One of them is going to look very familiar from Milda's presentation. But let's start at the more kind of coding approach, and then we'll work up to the no-code approach. I have, for example, here what we call a transform task, and this is where I would like to separate out longitude and latitude. At the moment, it's in one specific field, and I would like to bring it out. On the left-hand side, I have the chance to just write the SQL. But I'm either quite lazy, or I'm just someone who isn't comfortable with SQL. Some people just, business-oriented people do not want to go and spend hours writing SQL, but instead want a bit of a natural language prompt to be able to write what they have in their head and how they would like the data to be formatted and generated for them. So the first way is just to write the SQL as you want on the left-hand side. The second way that I mentioned is actually going to be using a natural language prompt to generate the SQL using generative AI. So I can actually put in a prompt like, I'll use all my existing columns plus 2 new columns named latitude and longitude. I can then press the generate button, and this will go off to Gen AI and bring back the SQL code. Now, I as the user, even though I haven't written that code, I can apply it to the left-hand side, but still have control. So I can change this, I can modify it however I would like. So this is a kind of a half coding approach. And something that we haven't really touched before, but it comes into what Hanu was saying earlier, is that I'm using specific small bits of AI in my pipeline that is available to me from Qlik Cloud to help accelerate these kind of building up, getting my data in the right structure and the right format. Something that I mentioned actually a couple of days ago, it's not just a case of saying, give me this table. But we've actually seen people be able to automate, say, differences in languages. So we have, for example, those of you who know SAP, it's a bit of a nightmare to work with when you have specific SAP language and column names. And because this is using generative AI, you can put in the prompt to put these into kind of English, user-friendly names. So there's a variety of different ways we can use this natural language prompt to get to business-ready data. Okay, so we've gone over 2 more coding approaches. My other example is a bit like what we saw earlier, and that is when I would like to have more of a drag and drop feel. And all of these multimodal ways of using data, of transforming data, really lends itself to more self-service. So a bit like what Milda was talking about, we are able to make sure that whoever needs to get to the data, at whatever stage the data is in, can use the data and make it ready for their specific application, business use case, wherever the data is going. So hopefully this looks quite recognizable. From the last session, we have pretty much the same UI. So you can see the parity between, or all through the Qlik platform. Just like before, on the left-hand side, we have those processes. So you can do string manipulations, you can do unions and joins. Like I said, you can also put in your own SQL so that you have that level of control, that level of flexibility, even within one of these transformation pipelines. So again, I actually put in 2 input tables. I join them together. I then cleanse them and reformat them to make sure that the columns, the fields are exactly how I want them to be. Just a reminder, as before, at each step of the way, Qlik Cloud is generating the SQL underlying all of this pipeline. So you can just drag and drop. You can just worry about how the data will logically looks, and Qlik will look after how it's written and how it's orchestrated on your underlying platform. Again, the data resides where I have it. So this, in my case, is Snowflake, and Qlik will make sure to operate with Snowflake in a very efficient and manageable way. Again, we talk about governance. It's not enough, especially these days, it's not enough just to be able to move and transform your data. You need to know exactly what is happening at each stage. And that's exactly why we have that data preview on the right-hand side. Okay, so something quite interesting this time. Something that I couldn't help but put into my pipeline here. I basically have a fork of my data. On the upper side, you have the people, the customers who have churned, who have left. And in their data, they had why they left. On the bottom, we have the existing customers. Of course, because they haven't left, there's no reason why they left. So taking the upper block, I have that reason. And that reason could be something like, oh, the competition had better products. Or, oh, the customer moved away. Or your price was too high. And although that's really good information, that doesn't actually give Hanu enough specific or labeled information to go and look at the key drivers or answer questions like, why would somebody move in the future? So what I can do as somebody who owns the data before it gets to Hanu is I can actually use Qlik Cloud's transformation pipeline to do some AI classification. Now this is where I can basically take my data. On the right-hand side, I can choose from a range of AI functions. For example, I could analyze sentiment, I could translate fields, but I'm going to choose classify. And what I'm going to do, if you can see on the right-hand side, I have about 5 labels like money, support, competition, etc. This is where I classify the churn reason. Now let's take this back to what is actually happening. It's Qlik Cloud that is doing and generating the SQL to be run on Snowflake. This AI classification is actually using the Snowflake native AI functionality. So that's exactly the code is being written from Qlik, generated for you without you needing to even know about that Snowflake AI functionality and how to code it. And I can take that churn reason on that right-hand side, as I said, like competitor made a better offer. And I end up with something called churn reason classification, my new column. And you can see here the examples. The competitor offered more data, so the classification is competition. I have the churn reason as moved, and the generative AI put the classification as other. We'll then be able to see later that this enables Hanu to get a richer understanding of not just why people have moved, but maybe how they move and churn in the future. Therefore, we can understand how we can prevent that customer churn. So I have moved my data from my database. Qlik is updating that data as it happens in the source. It is moving to my target, updating it in place. I can then transform that data. I can do joins. I can fork my data. I can filter my data. I can use AI on my data, all generated by Qlik automatically for you to accelerate that time to get the data ready. As I said before, I unfortunately can't just sit back and relax just because I've been able to transform the data. It is ready, but does Hanu know where to find it? Do we, Hanu and I, know that that data is clean and is trusted enough to go forward into his machine learning data sets? And that is where, like before, the sharing the data comes in using Qlik Talent, Cloud, and data products. So let's have a complete look at that specific data product. Like I said earlier, this is the data marketplace. This is where I can share my data products, and each data product is a collection of my data sets. So I have 2 data sets within my churn data product. That is the data set of the people who churned and the data set of people who are existing. Just like before, I can get an AI-generated description, or I can make that myself. I can make it as easy as I like for Hanu to understand what is in this data. You can then see that I have that trust score, and it's about 70%. So the validity is very good, the completeness is excellent, but I haven't shared it enough yet. Hanu hasn't started working with it yet. So the other scores bring it down to around 70. But just like before, that exact data set we can go into. We can take a look at exactly what it looks like through profiling and data preview. But the nice thing here, just like before, is the lineage. I can go from that transformed data set on the right-hand side. From field level, I can map it all the way back to my MySQL data that I got at the beginning. So again, movement, transformation, and ultimate governance. Once I am happy with this, I can share this customer churn data with Hanu. So jump forward in time about half an hour and pretend that we've seen Hanu's excellent presentation. And he is now using this data in anger in Qlik Cloud. I can then go back into that same data product, and I can see that actually it is now being used within Hanu's environment. You can see the discoverability is up, the usage is up, and the trust score is nearly 90% now. And I can actually see that in data preparations, in apps, in machine learning deployments, I can actually see Hanu's work just there in my screen. So Qlik Data Products provides this one-stop shop for everything regarding this data, where it's come from, where it's going to, so we can all understand what's happening with it. Is it actually being used, or is it data that I transformed and is not being used by the business? I can ask why not, and we can reiterate the transformations and the standardization. So we have taken data. We have taken data related to churn. We have moved it and keep moving as it is updated into my Snowflake table. I can then transform and standardize that data ready for my data scientists to take on. Something really nice that Martin actually mentioned earlier is something called cross-pipeline projects. And this is where you can actually have that one pipeline in two. You can actually land and store the data and then give different teams access to that same stored data and make sure that they can then transform and ready the data in their own way, in their own environment even, and make sure that it's ready for any type of use case that comes our way. Then from any of those pipelines, we can make sure that data is shared to the right people at the right time, with previewing, with access rights and lineage and impact analysis as well. And again, this is all in the same tenant as I can do my Qlik analytics as well. It is actually the same screen in the same menu. I can go between integration and analytics because it is a holistic platform to do all of this from left to right, if you so desire. With that, I don't want to keep you from coffee, but I would just like to make sure that this data is now shared with Hanu, and Hanu will take it on to do that right-hand side later. So thank you very much.